What is the worst example of helicopter parenting you've ever seen? I've been in and worked at a university for the past 10 years or so. To me, the worst examples aren't the incredibly hyper-controlling parents around lower, middle, or high school age. Those parents can be absolutely ridiculous. But when the kid is still living under their roof, I can understand being involved. For me, the absurd ones are the ones that continue helicoptering once the kid gets to college. A few things I've seen in my years here. Parents calling professors to complain about their kids' grades or how their kid was graded. I've seen this all the way up to graduate students. Parents demanding our registrar change their kid's schedule at their request because they're paying tuition. A parent demanding our registrar change their kid's major at their request because, again, they are paying tuition. This mother demanded that her son be a biomedical engineering major instead of a computer science major. Parents sitting in on their kids' classes on the first day with their kids and going up to talk to the professor afterward. I mean, I can understand sitting in the back of one of your kids' first really big classes just to get a feeling for what they are going to be doing. But sitting with them and actually participating? Oh my god. Fortunately, the law and our school are adamant about this. Administrators and professionals are to reply by law. We cannot discuss this with anyone except the student to everything. But half the time that just ticks the parent off even more because, after all, I'm paying tuition, he'll take what I want him to take. My parents were pretty bad crap crazy about parenting. As I got older, they got more and more crazy. Wouldn't let me move out to go to uni at 18, so I ended up living at home. They wouldn't let me date, would have crazy arguments and occasionally get physical with me if they discovered I had spoken to a boy, limited my time on the internet, confiscated my phone even after I was an adult and paying for it myself. Last year I left home and they called the police reporting me missing and wasted a lot of police time. Then turned up at my BFS house 4 hours away where I was staying. We had to call the police who escorted away somewhere safer. They constantly hounded me with calls and texts. I went to see them 2 months later and they locked me into my old bedroom and my BF had to call the police again so I could leave without them hurting me. I went back in February to collect clothes and some belongings and had to have police escort me there. Glad I did, because they decided to have a huge family gathering and wanted to ambush me when I got there. I saw them once since then in June when they came to see me. Didn't let them know where I lived and met them for half an hour in the park and crap got serious so I left again. Kid on my youth hockey team wasn't allowed to get dressed in the locker room. His parents made him dress in gear at home and then ride, in the backseat only, to the game. More deets. My parents were friendly with his parents so every once in a while I would have to catch a ride with them if my parents couldn't take me and I was not allowed to dress in the locker room either. This was not a case of embarrassment or transgender stuff as I remembered him asking to be allowed in the locker room. Just a case of overprotection from being the only child I guess. This continued into middle school. So they beat their kid and don't want you to see the bruises. I work for the help desk at a university, and I get disgusted with some of the parents that call in. Most of the time they want me to give them Junior's password so that they can see his homework, grades, classes, etc. We have a separate login type system for financial aid related stuff, but these parents want to have the full password. Some things that I have heard, but I am paying for him to be there, so I should have access. I am his mother, and I need to know what he is up to. I just want to make sure he is taking the right classes. Unfortunately, I am not allowed to tell these people to cut the umbilical cord, but I can't give them the password either. I've been yelled at a few times. Just to make a point, I have never had a father call in and ask for this. I have had hundreds of mothers though. To be totally honest, when I worked in IT, these were my absolute favorite kinds of calls, walk-ins. Ordinarily I spent my whole day bending over backwards for unbelievably entitled users, but these were some of the few situations where I got to refuse a request. There's nothing more satisfying than smiling and saying no to someone as they get progressively more angry at you over the phone. I once got a phone call from a parent screaming at me asking why her daughter wasn't allowed to swim in a competition coming up that weekend. She wouldn't let me get a word in to explain that I was not, in fact, her daughter's swim coach. I am not a swim coach at all. Her coach had the same name as me and was even the same age, but still lived with his parents, so mine was the only phone number in the phone book with my name. This was over 10 years ago. She went on for about 5 minutes explaining that she watches all the kids swimming and her daughter was definitely the strongest in her group. I was so mad. I simply agreed and told her that her daughter would definitely be swimming this weekend. She congratulated me on making the right decision and hung up. I really wish I could see what happened. Just a few months ago, while I was working my custodian job at my school's student union, a worried mom approached. She told me she lost her daughter and that she was lost. She tried calling her and she didn't answer. I took it very serious and asked her where she was supposed to be. She said at one of the dorms. Eventuality, the daughter calls and says she is separated and the mom tells me she is scared and alone. We leave the union building and search for her daughter and we arrive at the dorm. I then begin to notice that it's full of group leaders and new students. It clicks that her daughter is 18 years old and the mom was overreacting. I just wasted 20 minutes helping a way to worried mom find her college-age daughter. I really thought a little kid was lost. I blame working retail prior to this job. TLDR. Mom told me kid was lost, but kid was a freshman. My mom is the definition of a helicopter parent, or at least was. Up until I was the age of 23, she would call and email any friends of mine whose info she had if I didn't return her call at once. She would constantly convince herself something terrible happened to me and would ask anyone I knew if they had heard from me recently. One particular time when I was 21, I didn't pay attention to my phone for about 2 hours. I then looked at it to see a series of escalating text messages and phone calls threatening to call the police if I didn't call her back immediately, because obviously I was dead in a ditch somewhere. I tried setting up a rule where I would call her once a day at a time of my choosing and she would stop her hysterics. She agreed, and then about 2 days later at around 7 PM, it was back to threatening to call the cops as I had not yet called her and obviously something terrible happened to me. No matter how much I called her in a week she would still freak out, so eventually I just stopped calling her so that she would understand that I didn't want to talk to her if she was going to keep treating me like a 7-year-old. She seems to have gotten better and hasn't called any of my friends within the past 2 years. Boy Scouts. I really enjoyed scouting when I was a kid, and the best part about it was doing cool stuff, camping, hiking, carving, fishing, etc. with boys my own age and without my parents around. So naturally when my own son got to the right age, I encouraged him to join a scout troop, and he was interested, so I signed him up. I think our involvement lasted about 2 months. I'm sure all scout troops are different, but this one in a relatively wealthy suburban area had pretty much institutionalized helicopter parenting. In the meeting rooms, every chair for a scout had 1 or 2 behind it specifically for the parents. Every activity was planned to include 1 scout and 1 or 2 parents. When they went on camping trips, the adults outnumbered the kids. Oh, and anytime your kid was going to handle a knife or start a fire, you had to sign a release form. In the Boy Scouts, it was the lamest thing I've ever seen. Worked in the goth store at the mall. A mom would come every week with her daughter, started when she was 15, and blow a ton of money on her. Her daughter was always so sweet but very shy. Her mom would go on and on telling us about her daughter's angelic voice and how she was going to be a superstar someday. The very day her daughter turned 16, she came in the store with her and asked for an application. Then she filled it out for her at my counter while telling me how amazing her daughter is, how she would be a hard worker, etc. All this while her daughter stood awkwardly to the side. Her mom always spent a ton of money and the girl was always nice, so I said frick it and hired her for the holiday season. I gave her 10 hours a week, never worked her alone, and just gave her stock to do. Her mom would come in every shift for at least 30 minutes, take her to lunch on break, and would still spend big bucks every week on her. I slowly weaned her off of visiting and the girl eventually started to blossom a little. I didn't keep her on after holiday because I didn't have the hours, but she was a good kid with a well-meaning but very overprotective mom. Today, that girl is a very sweet girl, has gotten a lot of confidence, and is doing alright. It was such a surprise to read one of these stories where the kid isn't completely messed up. I once arrested an 18-year-old for DWI. She called her mother from the car as the stop was happening, and mom showed up on the side of the road at the same time I was starting my SFSTs. Mom insisted that there was no way her darling was drunk while she's bombing the tests, and then when the cuffs went on, she insisted that there was no way I could arrest her. It would keep her from going to college, follow her forever, etc. Long story short, mom ended up getting cuffed up for attempted bribery and obstructing, and she and her daughter ended up sharing a jail cell that night. Helicoptering her kid all the way to jail. Should have found a way to give her a different cell, just to rob her of that. A neighbor of mine has always been a rich spoiled brat. As an only child to parents who are each worth millions, she always got whatever she wanted regardless of how expensive or frivolous it was. When she was 15, she always came home crying because the other girls made fun of her breast size. Within a month, she had undergone plastic surgery to reduce their size. She is a chunky monkey. Her first car was a G35 coupe which she drove into a light pole while leaving the dealership. A few months later she was driving a BMW M3 because her 2013 G35 was junk. When she went to college, she got depressed from being away from home. The university was an hour and a half from her house. Regardless, her mom had to buy a house next to the university so she could stay with her daughter. Her mom left her husband to be with her daughter through college. The husband could not move due to work and is now filing for divorce. I fear for what kind of worthless person this child will become once she is forced to enter the real world. If the parents have enough money, this may never even happen, sadly. Had a mom of an athlete make up a fake Facebook account to befriend her daughter's teammate arch rival. In the mom's mind, as a young handsome boy admirer, she, posing as the boy, began sending the girl gifts and chatting with her nightly. For weeks the victim girl was stoked on her internet boyfriend which, as her coach, was alarming enough to say the least. Well, right before a major competition, the boy sent her a gift basket with candies and whatnot. Her parents, thankfully at this time, caught on to her relationship and intercepted the package, thinking that she was being groomed for some kind of future physical relationship with the boy. When they opened the package to examine its contents, they noticed a strange odor. Couldn't tell you what it was, but long story short, the mom tried to poison the girl. Police were able to trace the account and the package back to the mom. Yup, helicopter parent and complete insanity. These are friends of my parents, or I think it's just the sister of my dad's college friend and her husband. Their son's probably in 4th or 5th grade, and every time we've visited their place or they've visited ours, it's scary to see how they micromanage the kid. He has a to-the-minute schedule of how to utilize his playtime. It's so weird. Whenever they visit, they bring along a bag with a few sets of toys. I've heard them say stuff like, "It's time to start putting your Legos away. You have 5 minutes before it's time to watch your DVD. You have 30 minutes for the DVD. Then you can decide whether you want to play with toy cars or read your book." I remember a time where I swung by their place to drop something off, and I stayed for tea. They told their son to show me all of the stuff he's been building with Legos. So he took me to the playroom and showed me these really great looking houses and skyscrapers. Some were from kits and others were all his own creativity. More than that though, he arranged all of these structures to look like an actual living town. I was impressed, and I listened to him describe how he laid it all out. He just gave random names to different areas. This is Chicago where all the buildings are. This is California and these are all the shops. Just as he was describing the last section. This is New York where everyone lives. His dad walks into the room and says, "No, that's wrong. They don't have houses like that in New York. That can be Queens." Closely monitored playtime and undermining a child's creativity. They aren't mean parents, as far as I know, but it's so weird. Even the way the kid talks makes it sound like he's reciting lines for a TV advert. Whenever they visit, there's always this, "Our son has something to say. Go ahead, greet everyone and thank them for inviting us into their house." And we get this saccharine, "Hello Mr. and Mrs. Alderian. Thank you for calling us to your lovely home." I work at a university and see all manner of helicopter parenting. The worst I ever saw was a family from China who had decided that their daughter was going to do an MBA and a law degree. They had her scheduled down. dropped her off, knew when she'd eat, would have her study at the library from X to Y hours, then be picked up to eat and study, wash, rinse, repeat. She started to falter mid-session. I was teaching the class and she was going to probably average a C or a D+ in the course. It was a required course and she needed it to be fully accepted into her chosen major. Well, all heck broke loose. Her father came to my office and through his daughter demanded to know why she was doing so poorly. I explained as best I could, but he was not pleased and left. Suddenly, either mother or father would come to class. This is strictly against policy, so they'd have to wait outside. I would tell them and all I would get was a dismissive no, I stay. Well, she came to my office when she should have been in another class and basically told me that her parents had been like this all her life. Her poor command of English was because they had homeschooled her under some crazy loophole, and she had a tough time with English. By the end of the semester, both parents, whom I gather owned a business, were waiting for me. She hadn't been to class and they explained that she had gone missing. They wanted to know if I knew where she was. I emailed her, but never heard back. Always wondered where she went. I see overly protective parents, but that was the worst I had ever seen in my entire life. I had a friend in high school who had a pretty disturbing version of helicopter parents. She had the normal, no job, no cell phone, no after school activities, come right home, no car, no driver's license crap going on. But get this. Her mom was a psychiatrist and her dad was a doctor. Her dad was her doctor. He diagnosed her with depression and then her mom was a psychiatrist. Her mom diagnosed her with severe depression and had her, temporarily, committed to an institution. When she got out 2 weeks later and I asked about it, she broke down crying and said she couldn't remember anything because they'd kept her so drugged up on her mother's orders. She ran away to California when she was 17. I think she's going for her doctorate in some science field now, so fortunately she managed to get out okay. Anyone's asking if this is illegal, and it definitely is. I didn't know at the time, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's the truth. To be honest, most of our group of friends were in fairly abusive family home lives. Hers was only a little above some of the others. Comparatively, I guess it just didn't seem that unlikely a thing for parents to be able to do and get away with to us. I have no idea how her parents pulled it off or didn't lose their licenses. I certainly have no intention of contacting those people to see if they're still practicing. She ran away 2 weeks after she got out of the institution. I assume she didn't want any of her friends to have to keep secrets for her when the police came around questioning us, because she didn't tell any of us anything. One day she was just gone. The only reason I know she's okay now is that she made a Facebook and friended us all about 3 years later. Whoa, her parents would definitely have lost their medical licenses if anyone found out about that. That's crazy. There's a decent chance there would be criminal charges too. First day of college. I noticed a couple sitting next to a student. The room is slowly filling up and we are about to start the orientation. I chat them up and sure enough they're the kids' parents. I not so subtly mention the parent etc. Orientation happening in another room. No bites. I go back over and say, we will be starting in a few minutes and this orientation is for students only. We'd like to stay. There are only enough chairs for the students and we still have people coming in. They can stand. They should have been on time. I finally had to ask my boss to get them to leave and they weren't happy about it. WTF. This kid is going to do great in a post-secondary environment. I'm one of those free-range free-thinking moms. When my son was about 10 or so, I let him ride his bike around the neighborhood. One of the moms called me to let me know my son was out riding his bike, alone. She was shocked when I said, yes, I know. She couldn't believe I let him out, alone. Another time, I was taken to task by another mom because I let him take public transportation, alone. He was 15. I take great pride that he's independent and doesn't need me, and when he leaves for college, I'm having a huge party to celebrate my freedom, huh? Our high school salutatorian's parents literally made her go crazy. She was your typical smart Asian. Straight A's, top of the class, got into Berkeley. Her parents were proud but extremely unhappy that she would be 600 miles away, so they decide to set up a phone in her room and call every 2-3 hours to ask her where she is, what she's doing. In addition, Her mom goes through her school emails, looks at the event and tells her what she can and can't go to. Surprise, she can't go to anything. About 2 years into college, she just snaps. The stress from school, her BF leaving her, and her parents was too much. She started dating this drug dealer and doing PCP all day, every day. Most of us just recently graduated from college, but no one really knows what happened to her. God, this is really awful. A new high school grad worked at my bakery over the summer. One night after closing shift, they all decided to go out and grab some photos. He told his mom, both through text and call, but she didn't believe it. Not only did she call my manager, she even called me, a college-aged shift leader, demanding to know where her son is. I wasn't even scheduled to work, so I had no idea what was going on, so I hung up the phone. I wake up the next morning to see an email in my inbox sent at around 3 AM. I want you to know that although little Zach has returned home safely, he could have easily been kidnapped and forced to say those things. As a mother, I'm appalled that you would even let him leave the store without his parents' supervision. Think long and hard about this before the next case turns into a missing child's case. Poor Zach. I knew this girl who was a couple grades younger than me. Her mom was the worst helicopter parent I knew. She'd go on dates with her daughter. She'd never let her daughter leave her sight when she was with a boy. When they were on dates and her daughter went to the restroom, she'd go with her daughter and apparently guard the door to the restroom to make sure the guy didn't follow her. She'd pick out the daughter's clothes every day to make sure her daughter wouldn't get too much attention from guys. All of these things might describe your typical parent of a helicopter parent. When the girl went to high school, the mom decided she was old enough to have her freedom. She stopped being a helicopter parent completely. One day the daughter comes crying to her mom and tells her mom that her boyfriend just dumped her. Mom tried to calm her down and says that it was just a boy, there will be more boys. But mom, you don't understand. I lost my virginity to him. Mom then proceeds to drive over to boyfriend's house and asks the parents to see their son. She confronts the son and proceeds to punt the son's balls. Son is on floor crying and his parents end up coming into the room. Mom turns to the boy's parents and say, if you charge me with assault on him, I'll charge him with debauchery on my daughter. And that was that. Sorry about my English. I'm a terrible writer. Just a couple days ago actually, me and my bandmates just returned from a competition around 11:30 or 12 o'clock. Now on the itinerary it says the time that's up on the paper is not exact. So this one freshman is putting up his uniform and his clarinet when some fat bee walks through the door. She then starts screaming about how he is late and if he doesn't come right now she'll make him drop out of band. The kid looks scared and embarrassed and walks out of room. It's nothing but silence. That woman makes me want to slap her or worse, follow her around with my sousaphone making the fat person walking in cartoons song. Poor kid. This is my legacy. A story of a freshman and his fat bee mother. Sweet. I learned to play that song on trombone. It's entertaining. Every school morning I drop 2 kids off early at one school after dropping the oldest off at high school. We have to sit and wait 10 minutes before the door opens, so we chat, listen to the radio, etc. There is a woman who must be front in line of all 3 of us waiting, so instead of pulling up into the existing line she will pull ahead, then back in front, even if it means sitting on the crosswalk. Then, when the door opens, she jumps out, runs around the car, opens the back door, gets out backpacks, multiple, opens the front door, puts out her hand to get her 5th grade daughter out of the seat, then puts her little backpack on her back, unfolds the pull arm for her roller backpack, then kisses her on the cheek and sends her off. I asked my kids if she was special or anything, and they just rolled their eyes and said yeah, special, sure. For those wondering, our ritual is 1. Fist bump. 2. Have a good day. 3. Love you. 4. Get out. Parents calling to ask how their child's job application is going or if they are hiring so they can apply for their child, and so on. I should add that we don't hire anyone below 18 at my job, so yay. Once had a parent call to ask why we fired their child since the employee was saying he didn't know why we did it. She quickly apologized when we let her know her child was terminated for gender-biased harassment. No, I won't say what it was. Yes, it was deserved. It sounds like the kid lied to his parents. Obviously, I would probably call in too. Since people don't get fired for no reason at all, even if that reason is resizing or other unrelated reasons to the person. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.